Chapter 281, The Fifth Hokage. Hiruzen had the same thought as Shikaku. He didn't dare to imagine what Fujin might do the next time if they said that his performance was unsatisfactory. He quickly nodded and answered, "Your performance has been very good. You will be promoted. However, we haven't arranged any Umbu subordinates for you yet. So you will be an Umbu captain only in name." Fujin replied, "That's fine. I will be visiting the library. And I also need a break after such a long mission. Preferably at least 1 or 2 months long break to learn new seals and jutsus. Take your time. I'll file the report later. See ya." Fujin immediately disappeared from the room despite none of the doors and windows being open. Shikaku and Hiruzen looked at where Fujin was standing. Shikaku cursed in his heart, "This brat. He created such a mess and didn't even stay to discuss how to handle it. And after giving me month-long headaches, he has the gall to ask for a month-long vacation." Meanwhile, Hiruzen thought, "Seals. Sigh, he will soon begin bugging me for Flying Thunder God." Shikaku looked at Hiruzen and asked while sighing, "Lord Hokage, if we don't promote him and send him for such a mission again, do you think he will try to assassinate Raza?" Hiruzen didn't reply and began considering it. After all, there was already an instance of a Kazekage disappearing. Unknown to him, the assassin's age back then wasn't much older than Fujin's current age. Hiruzen shook his head and said, "Unlikely, unless you specifically mention it. Regardless, his performance has been excellent." Shikaku was dumbfounded. He thought, does no one understand sarcasm? He smiled bitterly and said, "It's not that his performance is excellent. Rather, it is too excellent. Making a Jinchuriki lose control and killing an elite Jounin was a bit too much. Suna will be forced to retaliate. And they will likely retaliate in an extreme manner. Not to mention, in addition to that, he killed 16 Umbu ninjas, a few Jounins and likely dozens of Chunins and Genins. And I still haven't considered the dead nobles, burned provision depot or the stunt he pulled in Shunkyuto. In the history of Suna, they have only once taken a bigger loss than this during peacetime. And they started the Third Great Ninja War. We have to be careful in case Raza decides to start another war." However, Hiruzen shook his head immediately and said, "No, the situation is completely different. When the third Kazekage died, Suna was very vulnerable and Raza's position as the fourth Kazekage wasn't very stable. In addition, they were surrounded by 3 major villages that were preparing for war. The current matter is an internal one and doesn't directly threaten their strength. And of the 3 major villages that surround them, one is in a formal alliance and another is embroiled in a civil war. So they won't choose war right now." Shikaku analyzed Hiruzen's words and nodded, "That makes sense. I guess Suna will be a mess for a few months. They will either focus entirely on stabilizing the situation, or they might do it alongside sending Umbu units into our country. Regardless, once their mess is resolved, they will retaliate somehow. We have to be prepared." Hiruzen nodded and said, "We do. But we have time. Due to the mess that Fujin created, Raza will be forced to deploy at least 1,000 Suna ninjas in the west to calm them down. In addition, he has also deployed a few hundred ninjas in the Wind capital. The other cities might also ask for additional security as a precaution. And they will also have to scour the desert to look for the culprit. This will ensure that he can't make a big move for the time being. So you just need to prepare for the moves they make in the dark. No need to create any more trouble in the land of Wind for now. Hopefully, their anger will fade away by the time these issues are sorted. However, the schemes they come up with have to be crushed. It's best if all Suna ninjas who infiltrate the Land of Fire are killed. Fujin's actions, though provocative, are a good deterrent. If we stop their schemes, then they will be even more afraid of breaking the alliance. Shikaku sighed. He will have to work a lot and won't be able to laze around for the next few months. He said, "All right." He began walking out. Hiruzen instructed, "Have a Yamanaka Jounin read Susumu's memories. And create a scroll describing his genjutsu jutsus and hand it to me. We won't be placing it in the library. Also, create a list of jounins who will benefit from learning these jutsus and can keep them a secret." Shikaku nodded and replied, "I'll get to it, Lord Hokage." He left the room. As he sat alone, his previous thoughts surfaced in Hiruzen's mind as he wondered, could Fujin be a candidate for 5th Hokage? Hiruzen let out a sigh. The matter of selecting the 5th Hokage had been troubling him for years and he still didn't have any solution. He thought, it'd have been great if Jiraiya or Tsunade accepted this position. Unfortunately, neither have the will to do so. As for others, there is no one qualified. If I retire now, the next Hokage will be Danzo. That wouldn't be good for the village. Though he is loyal to the village and his ambitions would benefit Konoha, he doesn't have the strength needed to fulfill his ambitions despite those Sharinans and Lord First cells. I was hoping Kakashi would rise to the challenge and reach my level. Seeing his potential, I and Danzo worked in the background to increase his reputation and give him sufficient fame. Unfortunately, despite being looked at as the leader by the younger generation, he is still too weak. A frown formed on Hiruzen's face as he thought about Kakashi. In terms of talent, Kakashi doesn't lose out to even Minato. His growth trajectory was very fast, even exceeding my student's strength at his age. Unfortunately, ever since the Third Great Ninja War ended, his growth has stagnated. He hasn't trained enough and spends most of his time in front of the Memorial Stone or doing missions. Not to mention, according to the Intel Attack Ascent, I doubt Kakashi could win against any of the Akatsuki members. At the current rate, I guess Kakashi will need around 5 to 7 years to reach my level. Unless something makes him feel like his strength isn't enough and he pushes himself once again. As for Fujin, I never considered him until now. Though his mission record is impeccable, he didn't fight anyone truly strong other than Kaminari. But with such a performance, he is far more capable than I expected. Even if I consider that he used hit-and-run tactics and only used a sneak attack to kill Susumu, that is still quite good. Especially if he can pull off something like this during a war. It could force Tsunagakure to withdraw half their troops from the front lines. His crystal ball lit up and showed the scene inside Section A of the library. Hiruzen thought, as I expected. He has already started looking at the seals. Once he masters the seals in this section, he will come asking for Flying Thunder God. If he can master it, his threat on the battlefield will be no less than Minato. Though it is a big if. Regardless, he has one advantage over Kakashi. He has a hunger to grow strong. Though he isn't as relentless as Guy, he still trains a lot and even asks for vacations to train. Unfortunately, he is quite young as well. He should be 14 soon. He will need 5 to 7 years to completely mature as well. Sigh, I'll have to hold my old bones together for the next 7 years. The only plus point is that we might have more than one option for the Hokage seat. A situation similar to when I and Minato were selected. With another sigh, Hiruzen stopped thinking about this matter. He got up and left the office. As soon as he left, Fujin flickered to Konoha's library. Though he had traveled non-stop for a day, he couldn't stop himself from visiting the library and checking out what all jutsus were available. He reached Section A while recalling Renjiro's words as he thought, though Renjiro emphasized the importance of mastering rank C jutsus, I have long reached a bottleneck. I won't be able to improve those jutsus any further without investing significant time. It's time to learn the rank A jutsus. I hope the library doesn't disappoint me. With eyes full of expectations, Fujin stepped into Section A of the library. Chapter 282, 58 Scrolls. Fujin entered Section A of the library and looked around. The size of this section was much larger than other sections. However, the number of scrolls in this section was the least. Fujin immediately began looking for wind jutsus. As he searched and collected the scrolls, he analyzed, I wonder if any rank A wind jutsu will be of any aid to me. After all, most of my rank B and C jutsus are as strong as rank A jutsus due to supercharging them and yin and yang control. In a few minutes, he grabbed all the wind scrolls and sat on a table. He analyzed, not bad. I wasn't expecting many wind jutsus considering how few were there in Section B. Fujin had found 6 scrolls. They were Blade of Wind Jutsu, Severing Pressure Jutsu, Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu, Assassin's Rush Jutsu, Geyser Creation Jutsu, Summoning, Giant Windmill Jutsu. Fujin decided to start with the one with which he was the most familiar. He opened the Blade of Wind Jutsu scroll and began reading. In a minute, he thought, this jutsu is almost entirely similar to the Wind Sword Jutsu. Just that the power, sharpness, and speed have been increased slightly and it also provides some defensive uses. Still, it should be very easy to learn. Fujin extended 2 fingers on his right hand. Immediately, the wind began flowing around them. A small 1-inch blade of wind appeared on top of them. Soon, that blade began increasing in size and reached 1 foot in size. Fujin analyzed it and nodded, this jutsu is down. I didn't even need to use the hand seals. I'll begin using this instead of Wind Sword Jutsu. Fujin kept the scroll back and turned his attention to the next jutsu. He analyzed as he read, the Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. I tried creating this jutsu by myself by referencing the Shadow Clone Explosion Jutsu. I succeeded, but the damage output was very low. It was just barely higher than an explosion tag unless I put in too much chakra. Unfortunately, I didn't get much free time after the Umbu training phase was over to work on this jutsu. Fujin read the entire scroll carefully and realized, oh, I see. I was going about this in the wrong direction. I was first creating a normal wind clone and then using its chakra to explode and generate sharp winds. But according to the scroll, the clone itself is created for the sole purpose of exploding. So it can explode faster and generate more powerful explosions. This is different from Shadow Clone Explosion. I wonder if I could modify Shadow Clones using these methods as well. Fujin kept the scroll and began reading the rest. He read the Severing Pressure scroll and shook his head, this scroll requires a fan to be used. Not suitable for me. Its lethality doesn't exceed my sword slashes and its range doesn't exceed infinite breakthrough. I don't need it. Fujin opened the Assassin's Rush Jutsu scroll and began reading. His eyes immediately sparkled as he thought, nice. This is a great and very practical jutsu. I'll learn this after mastering the Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. Fujin checked the last 2 jutsu scrolls as well and had mixed feelings. He analyzed, these jutsus are a bit difficult and have limited use. But they are quite strong. Summoning, Giant Windmill is a jutsu similar to Rashomon Summoning. This jutsu was created by the second Kazekage as well. The jutsu summons a giant windmill that is around 3 stories tall from the ground similar to Rashomon gates. However, instead of defense, This jutsu is for attacking. The blades of the windmill will spin rapidly and will form a strong wind flow that will pull everything towards the blades. If anyone gets caught in it, they will be chopped in pieces, a certain death. Unfortunately, even the user isn't spared from this wind flow. Though it isn't an issue as I can hide underground. But, I can't use this jutsu when I'm with allies. In addition, it is also heavy on chakra. And though the damage potential is high, it won't be effective against veteran ninjas. They will just hide underground or find something for support. So the only use of this jutsu is to clear cannon fodder when I'm fighting solo. Not very useful as I already have too many means of doing that. Other than running away, this is what I excel the most at. As for the geyser creation jutsu, it is a bit complicated as it is based on a Steam release jutsu from the Sakai clan. The jutsu has two phases. In the first phase, cracks and holes have to be created in the ground. And then we have to make hot steam erupt from the ground and blast whatever is in the way. However, this jutsu was modified. Instead of hot steam, I will have to make highly pressurized air erupt from the cracks in the ground. Instead of blasting and burning, it will cut the ones in the way. And since this jutsu comes from the underground, the opponent won't be able to hide underground to avoid the attack. I'll learn this jutsu as well. 2 new jutsus along with the wind explosion clone jutsu, not bad. Unfortunately, it looks like Konoha's stock of wind jutsus isn't very high. Or perhaps, the number of rank A wind jutsus itself is quite low. Would make sense if even something as lethal as the wind vacuum technique is only rank B. Fujin kept the wind scrolls back and began collecting the scrolls related to Fuin jutsu. There was a hint of excitement in his eyes. Even more so than when he checked the wind jutsus. The reason for this was simple. If Fujin could learn and master every seal in this section, he would be a Fuin jutsu grandmaster. Very few people in Konoha could call themselves this. More importantly, it would allow Fujin to ask Hiruzen for the Flying Thunder God. As he collected the scrolls, he realized, I see. Almost half of the scrolls here are for Fuin jutsu. As for the rest, the majority are rank A fire jutsus followed by water and earth jutsus. I guess this shows the foundation of this village. Fuin jutsu scrolls probably came from Mito, earth, and water scrolls from the Senju while fire scrolls should have come from the remaining clans. In all, Fujin found 58 Fuin jutsu scrolls. He created a few clones and they divided the scrolls among them. They immediately began studying. After around half an hour, a Jounin entered Section A. He had received information that someone went into Section A of the library without authorization. However, as soon as he entered, he was left dumbfounded by the sight. 10 people with similar faces were reading the scrolls and had more scrolls with them. His eyes twitched as he thought, using shadow clones to read in the library? That's a first. He coughed to attract Fujin's attention. But Fujin didn't even look at him, leaving him standing alone awkwardly. He walked towards one of Fujin's clones and asked, "What are you doing?" Fujin's clone looked up and answered, "Reading." The man was left speechless once again. Fujin's clone was looking at him as if he was the biggest idiot in the world. He wondered, do his eyes have an issue? He said, "I am the supervisor of the library. Tell me, why are you in Section A? It is restricted and only Jounins can enter. If you are here without any authorization, you will be arrested and punished by Lord Hokage." Fujin's clone looked back at the scroll and began reading as he said, "I got promoted today and reported to Lord Hokage that I'll be coming here. Feel free to ask him." The supervisor was dumbfounded. He thought, such a young Jounin? I'll have to confirm with Lord Hokage though. It'll be a pain in the ass if he is lying. He asked, "What is your name?" Fujin's clone answered, "Suzuki Fujin." The supervisor nodded and left. He had no intention of talking further with Fujin. He left the section and asked a couple of people to keep an eye on Fujin while he confirmed whether what Fujin said was true. Fujin and his clones ignored this matter. They went through every scroll in detail. It was a few hours past midnight by the time they were done. Fujin dispelled the clones one by one and received their memories. He let out a sigh. "I thought that like jutsus, the number of seals in this section would also be lesser. Instead, it's many times higher. No wonder that despite there being so many seal masters, there are so few grand masters in Fuinjutsu. If I don't use shadow clones, I'll probably need more than a decade to learn all these seals. Even with shadow clones, this will be very time-consuming. I should first learn the rank A wind jutsus. Then I will focus entirely on the seals." A smile formed on Fujin's face as he thought, "Fortunately, I found the few seals I was looking for. Once I learn them, I can begin working towards that plan." Chapter 283, The Dangerous Copy Ninja. In the last few hours, Fujin had found numerous seals and formations. Among them, the most important seals were, the 4 Symbols Seal, 5 Elements Seal, 5 Elements Unseal, Evil Sealing Method and Iron Armor Seal. In addition, there were many Juinjutsu seals as well as barriers. Fujin analyzed, the quantity and quality of the seals is good. Especially the 4 Symbol Seal. I was worried that it would be in the Forbidden Scroll. In addition, there are also the methods with which Suna and Kumo seal their tailed beasts. However, the reverse 4 Symbol Seal and 8 Trigram Seal aren't here. I guess I could learn the 8 Trigram Seal through experimentation. It could provide me with valuable experience in creating new seals based on what I know. Unfortunately, I have no idea about the reverse 4 Symbol Seal. It could have been a good trump card to use in the organization. That said, fortunately, I also found a lot of Juinjutsu seals. After I learn them, I can take steps towards creating a seal for my organization members. Until I succeed, I won't work towards finding new members. Fujin finally got up and left. He stepped out of the library and saw the night sky. He looked up and thought, "I completely lost track of time. It's all right. The gains were quite high. I'll take a good rest today. Training can wait for a day." He began moving towards his home. However, despite it being late at night, Fujin wasn't the only one up. Inside the Hokage building, Shikaku sat in a room with a dozen Jounin and Umbu captains in front of him. He was assigning them missions to prepare for Suna's retaliations. Though Shikaku was reluctant to work, his situation was far better than another person who was far away from him. Tsunagaku. One ninja was running fast from the Kaze Cage building to Raza's house. As soon as he reached it, he slammed the door loudly while shouting repeatedly, "Kazekage-sama! Wake up quickly!" The banging and the shouting woke up Kankuro and Tamari along with Raza. With a frown on his face, Raza walked towards the door and opened it. He angrily asked, "Why are you creating a ruckus?" The messenger immediately said, "Kazekage-sama, we just received a report from Elder Manabu from the west." Gat. He stopped speaking as he noticed Tamari and Kankuro watching them from behind. Raza noticed it. The messenger handed a scroll to Raza and said, "Kazekage-sama, it's an emergency." Raza opened the scroll and began reading. Anger formed in his eyes as he gritted his teeth. He instructed, "Summon all the elders and the council members right now." The messenger nodded and left. Raza turned around. Tamari asked, "Did something happen, father?" Raza replied without looking at her, "Everything's fine. Go back to your rooms and sleep." Tamari had a bad feeling. She asked, "Is Gara all right?" Raza opened the door to his room and said, "He is fine. What can happen to him? I need to get ready. Now go to bed. I will be busy." He entered his room and shut his door. Tamari and Kankuro looked at each other helplessly. Raza began changing into his formal attire. Within 15 minutes, every council member and most elders inside the village assembled in the meeting room. No one was happy at being woken up at this hour. Finally, Raza entered the room and took his seat. He looked around and noticed that everyone was there. Goza asked, "What happened now? Did Manabu catch the culprit?" Raza had a grim face. He placed the scroll on the table and said, "No. They set up a trap for the culprit with over 100 troops. However, they still couldn't stop him. He caused Gara to lose control and killed Susumu before running away. They have lost track once again." The eyes of the council members widened. Seijo exclaimed, "How could Susumu be killed?" Goza asked, "Was Gara stopped and is he all right?" A few others began reading the scroll. The elders were shocked. Though Susumu wasn't the strongest among them, he was the most annoying to fight due to his unique usage of genjutsu. Killing him was very difficult. Raza frowned and answered, "He injured Gara, which made Gara lose control and transform partially." Odaka sensed that he had run away. While Odaka, Susumu, and Manabu were stopping Gara, he sneak attacked Susumu and killed him before running away for real. Gara was stopped once again, but a few ninjas died as they didn't have Susumu's help. His words caused silence to spread in the room. Their expressions became grim. Finally, Goza asked, "Who was the culprit?" To be able to run away unharmed from more than 100 ninjas while confronting a Jinchuriki and multiple elite jounins, did Konoha send their son in? Raza replied, "They couldn't identify him. Manabu suspects that he used the transformation jutsu. But, neither of the two Sunins is known to use wind jutsus. Though it isn't difficult to learn new jutsus, covering their fighting style would be difficult. So I doubt that is the case." The council members agreed. If not for the result, no one would suspect the Sunins. However, one of the council members, who was reading the report, asked, "But if not for the Sunins, who in Konoha could do something so remarkable? Even if we consider other villages, there is no one who is famous for using wind jutsus." Manabu said that his ability with the wind jutsus exceeded his. The council members began thinking and discussing. Finally Goza said, "In the last couple of years, Konoha's copy ninja has been gaining a lot of fame. Could it be done by him? After all, they say that he has copied 1,000 jutsus. In addition, he was taught by that cursed yellow flash." They debated among themselves a lot and finally agreed. Josuke said, "I thought Konoha was just pushing his reputation to deter other countries. I didn't think that he could actually live up to his reputation. Regardless, we have to retaliate." He was cut off by Seijo, who said, "But we first need to secure the West. And set better traps for him. If he is in the West, then he can make more attacks. Even if he doesn't, the journey from there to the border with the land of rivers will take 4 days at the very least. We need to intercept him inside our country and kill him. Once he is dead, we can create ambush squads led by elite jounins to infiltrate the land of fire and target their nobles." Everyone agreed with his words. However, Ryasa asked, "But who can stop him?" He was able to run away from a combined attack by Manabu, Odaka, and Susumu. We don't have anyone to stop him. His words caused another wave of silence to spread in the room. None of them wanted to fight the copy ninja. However, Raza suddenly said, "You don't need to be worried about it. I will make a move myself and bury him in the desert permanently. After I leave, you guys decide which nobles to target and create foolproof plans for the same. For the time being, begin arranging ninjas to scour the desert. As soon as he is discovered, I will make a move." Raza's words caused mixed feelings to spread among the council members. On one hand, they were proud and relieved that their Kage was making a move himself. Though Kakashi was strong, none of them believed that he would stand a chance against Raza. However, on the other hand, they were ashamed that there was no one other than Raza who could act in this situation. After all, their opponent wasn't even in the top 3 in terms of strength inside Konoha. They nodded and immediately got to work. By noon, they had prepared more than 500 ninjas to move out. Raza himself was ready to move out. Unfortunately, before he could leave, Raza received another message. Raza opened the scroll. A chill passed through his spine as he read about the events that took place in Shunkyuto. Cities and towns around Shunkyuto had finally started receiving the migrants. They sent a message to Tsunagakure as soon as they heard about the events the migrants described. The news about the events spread through those cities in no time. A fear about Tsunagakure and disgust for Raza spread in those cities as well. Raza held the scroll tightly. He was shaking in rage as he thought, did Konoha deploy this man to split our country into two? But, how can that happen? Unless Konoha also plans to invade us at the same time. But, has Konoha's military recovered to this extent? Are they not afraid of Kumo and Iwa taking advantage? He looked at the messenger and instructed, call all the council members. Even call those 2 elders. We will be having another meeting. The messenger's eyes widened as he wondered, what message did the scroll contain for his expression to become so grim and for him to contact those 2? He nodded and quickly left. Chapter 284, One man makes the entire world move. Within 15 minutes, every council member and elder except 2 were in the meeting room once again. They noticed Raza's grim expression and asked while sighing, what happened now, Kazekage-sama? Their sigh wasn't an act. All of them were sick of the recent events. It was just one thing after another continuously with no respite. Raza didn't say anything and just handed them the scroll. Their eyes widened and arms shivered in rage and horror as they read the report. Josuke shouted, "This is outrageous. We are in an alliance. Do they want to launch a full-fledged war?" All of them were experienced. They reached the same conclusion as Raza. Raza said, I received these reports from the cities and towns around Shunkyuto a few minutes before I called the meeting. Wait for some time. There are still more people to come. Josuke looked around and asked, who else is remaining? As if to answer his question, the door opened and 2 very old ninjas walked in. The council members and elders were surprised. They were Ebizo and his sister Cho. Behind them, the messenger finally sighed in relief. Bringing these 2 here was a huge headache. He thought, I know she is just fooling around, but one of these days she might really end up dead. Cho and Ebizo immediately noticed the tense expressions in the room. Cho asked, why are your expressions so grim? I haven't even played possum yet. Raza handed them a scroll and said, this isn't the time to be fooling around. Please read. The siblings began reading. Unlike the time when Garo was kidnapped, Raza was still alive. Though he was junior to them, they couldn't dismiss him casually like Baki. In addition, their health was much better as compared to what it would be 6 years later. Their eyes widened as they completed reading the report. Joe chuckled and said, "That's why I told you to not form any alliances. They will stab you in the back the very first chance they get." However, her brother said, "True, but we were the ones to make a move first. They didn't act against us until we took steps towards breaking the alliance." Ebizo's words reminded the council members and other elders that it was Suna's choice that led to Konoha's retaliation. Goza gritted his teeth and said, "But their actions are outrageous. There were numerous ways to counter our moves. There was no need to do something so drastic. I'm afraid that they intend to launch a war." Raza nodded and said, "I'm of the same opinion. I plan on deploying 2,000 ninjas along the border with the Land of Rivers to deter Konoha. What are your opinions?" The council members were surprised. They realized that Raza already had a plan. He had just called them here to inform them and check if they had any ideas. However, considering how grave the situation was, no one opposed him. Only Joe laughed in disdain while Ebizo shook his head. He said, "If you do that, then it will give Konoha an excuse to mobilize as well. And if Konoha indeed wants a war, then they will be prepared. Such a frontal confrontation is what they would want to see. In addition, the culprit who made this mess will also receive more opportunities to keep creating a mess in the West and worsen the situation even further." His words caused everyone to frown. They thought for a bit and realized that it made complete sense. Goza asked, "Then what would you recommend, Elder Ebizo?" Ebizo said, "Instead of deploying an army on the front lines, divide them in small squads and discreetly deploy them in the deserts between here and the Land of Rivers. Have them deploy various traps to harass any incoming army. Even if Konoha marches, we shouldn't defend the front lines. Instead, let them enter the desert. We will fight and stall them here instead of fighting a quick and decisive battle. I doubt Kumo or IWA would miss the opportunity to take advantage if Konoha is stuck in a drawn-out battle here. In addition, we can use this time to find and kill the one making a mess in the west. As long as he is dead, we won't have to worry about our backs." Ebizo's words made sense. Everyone nodded. Only Seijo asked, "But what if our estimates are wrong? What if this is Iwa's scheme and they plan to attack us when our forces are facing Konoha?" Before Ebizo could answer, Goza answered, "Let them attack. It's only a vast desert from the Land of Birds to here. We can use our alliance with Konoha to make them attack IWA through the Land of Grass. And we can move our forces from the west and east to intercept and stall Iwa's army. In case IWA and Konoha have allied, then we will have to stall them both and form an alliance with Kumo and have them attack Konoha. In that case, the war will enter a stalemate." Everyone agreed with his answer. Seeing that there was no other objection, Raza said, "All right, let's do this. Seijo, you will lead 500 ninjas to the west. You will be responsible for scouring the deserts and providing more security to the cities there. If you encounter the copy ninja, don't engage and inform me. I will move towards the escape routes to intercept him if he decides to escape the county." Raza turned his eyes towards the siblings and said, "In my absence, I'll leave the safety of the village to you two. Yura will be returning with Gaara in a few days. Please inspect his seal as well. Goza, you will be responsible for slowly deploying 2,000 ninjas towards the Land of Rivers and have them deploy traps and prepare ambushes. The rest will aid you. Any objections?" No one objected. Raza got up and left. Within an hour, 500 ninjas departed from Sunagakure towards the western part of the country to hunt for Kakashi, who was neither the culprit nor present there. The real culprit had a nice long sleep and was enjoying his lunch in Ichiraku. He wasn't aware of the movements inside the land of wind. But if he was, Fujin would wonder what sort of expressions Raza, the council member, the elders, and the 500 ninjas would make if they learned the truth. Though Fujin didn't care about this matter, others did. The next morning, every major village received reports that 500 ninjas had moved from Tsunagakura towards the western part of the land of wind. Due to how massive the movement was, every spy in Tsunagakura noticed it immediately. Most leaders were puzzled as to why Suna was making such huge movements. Onaki wondered, what's going on in Suna? They have already deployed more than 600 ninjas. And now 500 more? And even Raza moved. Don't tell me that bastard Raza intends to start another dumb war. He immediately called for a council meeting. After a discussion, they decided to deploy 500 ninjas on the borders with the land of bird and another 750 ninjas on the border with the land of bear. Just like Onaki, the fourth Raikage was also puzzled. After thinking for a bit, he decided to secretly ready his forces to take advantage in case a war broke out. Unlike the rest of the world, two people were very clear about the situation. Shikaku analyzed the news. I can understand why the 500 ninjas left. But why did Raza leave? Do they not know that Fujin already left? He opened the report Fujin had made and checked the end. He thought, his report doesn't mention how he returned. Now that I think about it, he returned way too quickly. Does he have a flying summon or know a space-time ninjutsu? He thought for a bit before giving up. Leave it, I'll just ask the Hokage. According to the movements, Raza likely wants to hunt Fujin. But Fujin is already here. A smirk formed on his face as he thought, looks like you will have a nice wild goose chase for quite some time. His smirk faded away as he let out a sigh. Unfortunately, once they give up, there is a high likelihood of them moving those troops towards our border. And thanks to the vast deserts, we won't even know where that army is. The best way to counter this would have been to deploy Konoha's forces. Unfortunately, that's the worst option here. I'll have to deploy many Umbu and spies in the land of river to warn us if the Suna army enters it. In addition, I will have to have Konoha's forces prepared for war. Sigh, so much work. Fujin's face appeared in his mind as he decided, no more long-term missions for this guy. Fortunately, I sent him to Suna. If this was Kyumo, the fourth great ninja war might have already started. Fujin was blissfully unaware of all these developments. He was back in his training ground doing his morning physical workout after a long time. Chapter 285, Ambition. Fujin stretched his body casually as he wondered, should I increase the intensity of the training seal? Though I didn't train my body for almost 3 months, I did eat healthy and ran a lot. Alright, I'll increase it from 40 to 45%. Fujin had long reached the maximum limit on the training seal that Hiruzen had created for him during his academy days. During his time in the Umbu, he had replaced it with a new training seal that he created. This one could apply 4 times the max pressure and resistance as the previous seal. Forgetting about all the turmoil he created a few days ago, he began training with maximum intensity once again and continued for 4 hours straight before going to Ichiraku for breakfast. As he ate the ramen, a smile could be seen on his face. He thought, now this is a good life. Sleep long, train hard, eat delicious food and don't worry about anything else. If I can't break through the limits to reach the top and events progress just as they did in the original story, then perhaps I'll retire after the fourth war and recreate all the famous fast food chains from my previous world here. Ayam noticed Fujin's good mood and asked, What's the good news, Fujin? Fujin shook his head and replied, no good news. Just missed the ramen for the past few months. Tuka smiled and said, it's good to have you back again, Fujin. Fujin nodded. He lifted the bowl and drank the soup and said, thank you for the meal. I'll see you tomorrow. Ayam replied, take care, Fujin. Don't train too much. Fujin nodded and left. As he walked back to the training ground, he thought, though a retired life enjoying all the delicacies sounds pleasant, it'd be a pity if that's all I manage to do after working so hard. My current strength is pretty much at the elite Jounin level. S rank is still quite far, but I feel that it is just a matter of time before I reach it as long as I keep training hard. I should reach it before Akatsuki starts collecting the tailed beasts. And, if I can learn Senjutsu or Flying Thunder God, I'll be able to rise all the way to the peak of S rank, reaching a similar level as Jiraiya or Minato. Perhaps only Nagato and Obito would be able to keep up with me then. However, once I reach that stage, getting any stronger will be difficult. If I ignore the Otsutsuki, only 4 ninjas are known to surpass that level. They are Hashirama, Madara, Naruto and Sasuke. But, Madara and Sasuke were able to do it due to eternal Mangekyou Sharingan. Naruto did it due to Kurama. As for Hashirama, he is just ridiculous. No point in thinking about him. The only way I could potentially keep up with them is if I capture and seal a tailed beast in me or through the 8 inner gates. But even these have limits and dangers and aren't surefire. Lost in thoughts, Fujin reached the training ground. He let out a sigh as he thought, to climb to the very top might need some drastic actions and insane planning. And, unlike those 4, I won't have any help. The only advantage I have is that I know the major events in the future. I'll need to take advantage of anything I can. Only then I will have any chance. But, I need to reach rank S first. Only then I can begin acting as well. For now, it's time to continue training. Fujin's hands moved rapidly as he weaved hand seals. When Fujin transmigrated to this world, he, like anyone else, wanted to reach the peak of this world. However, unlike the others, Fujin was very aware of how dangerous and hazardous this world was. The threat suppressed every desire other than his will to survive in a world teeming with adversity and danger. As he grew, trained, fought, and overcame obstacles, his spirit grew resilient and his body honed to a razor's edge. The pursuit of survival became a testament to his unwavering determination. However, as he slowly carved his path through the crucible of trials, a subtle transformation took place within him, imperceptible even to his own consciousness. His confidence grew. He no longer had to be worried about missions going awry. He was aware of the ninjas that could threaten his life. And he had multiple means of escaping even from the worst situations. Due to this, a seed of evolution took root in the very depth of his being. Every step he took forward, every victory he experienced and every improvement in his strength nourished this seed. The path to survival had ignited a desire to reach the very top of this world and leave an indelible mark upon its tapestry. Driven by this newfound desire, Fujin set his eyes on the pinnacle and began his training. Wind Release, Wind Explosion Clone Jutsu. Fujin closed his eyes as he sensed the movement of chakra through his body. Soon, a wind clone was formed in front of him. Fujin looked at the clone as he observed, I see. The normal wind clone has yin and yang chakra in equal quantities. However, this clone didn't have the same balance. Instead, it was mainly made of yang chakra. The wind clone nodded at Fujin and looked in the opposite direction. He instantly disappeared and appeared on a boulder around 50 meters away. He placed his palm on the boulder and exploded. Fujin observed the explosion and nodded in satisfaction as he observed, "Good. The explosion is almost 3 times as strong as what my normal wind clones could do. But, with such an imbalance in yang and yin, this clone should have some limitations. I need to test it." Fujin weaved the hand signs once again and created another wind explosion clone. He followed it up by creating a wind clone and flickered away. The two clones looked at each other. There was no need for any words to be exchanged. Both jumped away from each other. 2 spheres of wind appeared in the hands of the wind clone. He launched both wind explosion spheres at the other clone. The wind explosion clone immediately got out of the way. At the same time, 2 spheres of wind began forming in his hands. However, instead of forming proper spheres, the jutsu collapsed. The wind explosion clone was surprised and looked at his hand while thinking, "What the hell? I can't use a simple D-rank jutsu." The wind clone immediately took advantage of the opening and built up his chakra. Wind release, infinite breakthrough jutsu. The wind explosion clone immediately noticed the incoming attack and flickered out of range. He tried making wind explosion spheres again but failed. Fujin observed the fight and realized, "I see. Since the balance is so off, the wind explosion clone can't use normal jutsus. More likely, it can only use jutsus that require more yang chakra. I guess the only way to use this clone is to flicker and explode." But, despite this, distinguishing between this and a normal wind clone is quite tough. Once I am able to make this clone without any hand signs, I can confuse my opponents with ease. So the effect would be quite similar to if the clone could use jutsus. As Fujin analyzed, the wind explosion clone couldn't form any jutsu at all. So he gave up and flickered towards the wind clone to self-destruct and make the fight a draw. However, the wind clone immediately flickered away and the two began a game of tag. Fujin watched with a deadpan expression as he thought, "I created you two to test out the differences. Why the hell are you two playing tag?" He immediately dispelled both the clones and analyzed, making this clone without seals shouldn't be difficult. But I'll leave it for later after I become used to using it. It'll save time. Fujin began weaving hand seals again. Anticipation could be seen in his eyes. Of the jutsus he found, he was the most excited about this jutsu. Wind release, Assassin's Rush Jutsu. Immediately, a high amount of chakra began flowing around Fujin. The chakra was rapidly converted into wind and in an instant, a vast amount of wind was forced behind him. The wind blasted multiple trees behind him and uprooted them. At the same time, Fujin disappeared and traveled in a straight line at a speed far exceeding the speed of wind instantaneous body jutsu. In the blink of an eye, Fujin appeared in front of a boulder. Chakra concentrated in his fist as he punched the boulder. The boulder was instantly blown apart. And a wide grin could be seen on Fujin's face. He analyzed, "Great speed. Though it uses a lot more chakra than flickering, it will be very domineering in a battle. With practice, I'll be able to sustain the wind longer and even change my direction freely. Combined with my swordplay or Senju Taijutsu style, it will be extremely lethal. Not to mention, it also prevents any attacks on my back. Alright, I'll master this jutsu right away."